Well, hello and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn. Delighted to welcome back Ben Habib. How are we doing, Ben?
I'm very well indeed, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me back on.
It's always nice to see you. Now, last time I saw you was out on the streets in the Freedom or the Free Speech Festival, the biggest festival of its kind for a very long time. Although the size of the crowds were disputed in the media, even though I was there, you were there, and we saw how large the crowd was. One of the points you made at the time is you were the only politician who bothered turning up. Why was that?
Well, I think it's a really good question, by the way. And it goes to the heart, I think, of a malaise and a sickness in the British political fabric. And it's this that people are so scared, politicians are so scared of being cancelled or set aside by the mainstream that they won't stand up for principle. They're prepared to accept the argument even though it may or may not be false, they're prepared to accept the argument that Tommy Robinson is the Voldemort of British politics, an evil person, and that they must not share a platform with him. Because if they were to do so, then the BBC, Sky, others, and so on would cancel them. And what I think all politicians miss, they miss a number of things when they behave like that. The first is that just purely from their own political perspective, they're missing connecting with millions of British citizens. I mean, I don't know how many you think were there the other day, Andrew, but I would say, you correct me if you think I'm wrong, but well over 500,000 physically present, well
Yeah, I
over
mean,
half a
and there
million.
must be a way of calculating this. And I've seen the aerial footage.
Yeah,
I posted some of it. Tommy posted some of it as well. And you can work it out. You can see how
yeah,
many people are on
it's
the streets.
massive anyway. And there were 2.5 million people online. So they're missing an opportunity to connect with their own people. But I think the more sinister thing is that in accepting that Tommy Robinson is the Voldemort of British politics and therefore you must not share a platform with him, what they're doing is taking the knee to cancel culture and they're effectively um, also standing, not that I'm a great banger of the drum of various human rights conventions, because I think they've been misused, but Article 20 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights gives every individual the right for political association, uh, the right to come out and speak. And they're effectively turning their back on that fundamental human right. And for me, when people used to ask me, will you speak at the Unite the Kingdom March? For me, it wasn't so much Tommy Robinson is Voldemort, I mustn't be on a stage with him. Um, but I am being invited to speak to the British people. On what basis could I turn that down? What would be my justification? And if the justification is that by association I may get cancelled because Tommy Robinson is cancelled, well, then I'm not being true to my principles of free speech and that UN Article 20 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that a lot of these politicians who regard Tommy Robinson as, kryptonite and won't go near him are quite happy to share platforms with Mary Lou MacDonald, who is head of Sinn Féin, the political arm of the IRA, who refuses to condemn terrorist action that's taken place on British soil. They're quite happy to hobnob with her. Michelle O'Neill, who is the first minister of Northern Ireland from Sinn Féin, equally refuses to denounce terrorism, but she was welcomed with open arms into the coronation of the king. And they're all at odds with each other. Mandelson, who was thrown out as ambassador of thrown out as ambassador the other day from the US because of his association with Epstein. Well, they're all friends with him, but they've got a problem with associating with Tommy Robinson. There are two rules being applied here. And I think we're not going to mend this country. We're not going to restore freedom of speech until politicians can be robust in applying the principles which they espouse. In other words, everyone has a right for a political association, and you should have the courage to connect with the British people. And even if Tommy Robinson is a convicted criminal, even if all his crimes were legitimately, he was legitimately charged and incarcerated, and well, he's paid his penance. He's paid, to the best of my knowledge, he's not running from the law. He's served whatever time he had to serve. And on that point too, lots of these politicians who are all clutchy of their pearl necklaces when they come to judge Tommy Robinson, they're all, or many of them, sorry, I keep saying all, many of them have friends who have been convicted of something in the past. And people do make mistakes. People do, make mistakes. They learn from them. They pay they pay the price of their crimes. So I'm not prepared to turn down a phenomenal opportunity to engage with the British people on the basis that Tommy Robinson is kryptonite and I may be cancelled as a result of it. And I think that any politician who does that is taking the need to cancel culture and needs to grow a backbone.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And actually, I sort of encouraged you, and it was sort of almost a rhetorical question when on this show I asked if you were asked, would you appear? Of course you would. Knowing you as well as
Yeah.
I do, I think it was a nonsense, and I didn't. It wasn't meant as anything other than that. I have obviously had Tommy on the show. We've had various other people as well. Elon also made an appearance, and it's interesting the backlash to his appearance and what people were saying about him. What was your response to that backlash?
Well, again, I think he said we got to fight, or words like we got to fight, I think was his message. And of course, the English lexicon is peppered with military metaphors. It doesn't mean he was advocating violence. He was merely suggesting that we've got to fight. I'm always talking about staying on the battlefield, being unbowed. I'll keep fighting until I'm bloodied. None of that is meant literally. All of that is meant in a campaigning sense. And all Elon Musk was saying was that unless you guys get a grip of the direction of travel of your country, you're going to find you haven't got a country pretty damn soon. And he's got a point. I agree with him. I mean, we've seen in the last few days how freedom of speech has been absolutely sat on, with various commentators being, arrested. Peter North, you might know him as the Northern variant online, being arrested for saying F Hamas, F Palestine, F Islam. All pretty, well, not all. I mean, F Hamas is absolutely fine. It's a proscribed terrorist group. Some may be offended with the other two comments, but that is not worthy. Him being socially offensive is not worthy or any justification to be arrested. And if you're not prepared to share a platform with Tommy Robinson, in effect, you're endorsing that kind of arrest too, by tangentially.
Yeah,
And Elon Musk was merely calling that out.
yeah, no, absolutely. And every day we see more and more examples of people being hauled up because of posts that they've made, sometimes a little while ago. There's even posts today which you retweeted, the particular person being arrested for posts that he mentioned about harassment and so on and so forth. So we've got to stop it, don't we?
We've got to stop it. And we can only stop it if we're brave. If we cower from it, then we are giving succor to it. And it remains the ideology in the form of governance of the day. And the whole point about a party like Advance is that it stands up for freedom of the people, freedom of speech, freedom of action. And, you can't pick and choose which parts of the UN Declaration of Human Rights you want to apply on a given day, depending who's exercising it. We either all benefit from it or we don't.
Yeah, it all makes a perfect sense. You had a very good reception. I got your wonderful hat, even signed
Yeah.
by Ben Habib. Look at that, straight on
Yeah.
eBay. I love it. So well done.
What did you get? 5 quid for it? No,
I think that's including postage. But tell me then, what were the results? I mean, you preached, as you say, you spoke very eloquently for several minutes, very engaged, and all the responses online were very positive about that. What were the actual effects in terms of numbers following your appearance?
So membership has gone up by about 7,000 since the Unite the Kingdom march. It's gone up quite a lot. We are on the map, and it's slowed down a bit recently, Andrew. But I would expect that to happen because we've hit our self-imposed hurdle of 30,000, and it tends in any event to move on news. So if another party does something particularly stupid, Advance does well. If we make an announcement, then we do well. If it jumps and then it sort of tails off a bit, the growth. But we're adding to three 300, 400 members a day, which is still damn good. We've
Very
just
good. Well,
doubled
I
the.
saw a post today from Advance UK saying you're the seventh largest party in the UK in under 3 months, and in fact you're now
Yeah,
pushing 37,000 members. Is that right?
that's correct. And Wikipedia, I think, has recognized us as the seventh largest. So we're publicly acclaimed by the extreme left wing Wikipedia.
Hurrah! Are they still calling you far right on Wikipedia?
They are still calling us far right, and if you click on the button of far right in our wiki page, it takes you to images of people with Nazi regalia. I mean, do I look like anything closely, remotely related to Nazis? I mean, I hope not.
No, it's great. Well, the thing about Wikipedia is anybody can edit it, and that's the whole point. Is that they need to have better. It's supposed to be the wisdom of the crowd, but sometimes the crowd is not very wise.
No, but it's interesting. Having said that, it was the American podcaster whose name escapes me, who's interviewing someone, and they produce evidence, and you can do it. I'll send it to you after this interview. Um, it's called Perennial Wikipedia, I think. You click on it, and it tells you which publications it finds acceptable and which ones it doesn't.
Right.
And it's, for example, GB News is not acceptable to Wikipedia, but surprise, surprise, The Guardian is. The Telegraph is acceptable to it, but not on transgender issues.
Yes.
So Wikipedia is actually policing its own sources of information. Having said that, it's an open sort of, open book, as it were. It's not. It's picking from the left-hand side, colloquially left-hand side of British politics.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, you mentioned GB News, and once a lot of the posts at the moment about saying you haven't appeared on GB News or Talk TV for a little while. Why is that?
Well, I think it's simply the Farage effect. GB News' biggest asset is Nigel Farage. I think he's got a chance of being prime minister in the next election, and they don't want someone like me speaking up against him, even though we have a perfect legitimate right to speak. And actually, we're doing quite well. I think some of what Advance UK is doing is newsworthy. The fact that we're endorsed by Elon Musk, the fact that we're the fastest growing political party in modern times, as far as I'm aware, that we've just applied to the Electoral Commission, that we've got a college full of great people, and we're growing fast. All of this should be something that should be of interest to GB News, but they're protecting Farage.
Yeah, it is interesting when it's call yourself the home of free speech, but if you shut down certain aspects of that free speech.
Yeah, well, they say you can say whatever you want, no one gets cancelled. Often
Yes.
I heard that said, except if you stand up against Farage.
Ah, there you go. Now, one of the things
Yeah.
I warned you about on this very show is people trying to hijack your name. And I saw a post today saying that Advance UK, you've applied for the official party registration, and within 24 hours, the dirty tricks began. A rival tried to do exactly that and hijack your name. Well, tell me about that.
So we disclosed, I think it was Sunday, the 7th of September, that we'd hit our 30,000 target. And Monday, the 8th of September, literally the next day, some other entity applied to be Advance UK to the Electoral Commission. Now, I know that application wouldn't have come from the left-hand side of politics because they would welcome a new entrant on the so-called right-hand side. So that application has come from someone who, ostensibly on our side of the debate, that wishes to cause us damage. But it's a frivolous application because the Electoral Commission is well aware of the fact that we launched on the 30th of June. And by the way, if anyone's watching this and you're behind that application, we also have a trademark application running, which predates the 30th of June. So even if you, by some miracle, get your Electoral Commission registration, we will shut you down under the trademark rules. They won't be able to practice. Sadly, the Electoral Commission refused to tell me who's behind the application on GDPR grounds because, it's private. I don't know why it is private. They've applied to be a public body. We should be able to see who the hell they are. But anyway, there's obviously some malign force that's trying to cause us trouble.
Yeah. And now you've got a few new people in the college. Gavin Maxwell, he's been very vocal. Talk to me about him and his work in technology and industry, about global agencies and how they have undermined Britain.
Yeah, so Gavin lives in Dublin. He is very much of our mind, completely understands that the supranational order has infected our domestic democracy to the point that we can't anymore regard ourselves as being properly democratic. He brings him with him. I don't know precisely how old he is. He's slightly older than me. So he brings with him a wealth of experience. And his is exactly the free thinking kind of mind that we need on the college, and of whom I think we're increasingly getting more and more. I don't know whether you've had a look at the college, but there's some great people on it. Professors, we're taking on, I think we've just approved, but we haven't announced yet, a professor in defense industry. We've got a professor of mathematics. We've got Lord Glendyne, who's a hereditary peer, has no axe to grind. He's just in it because he wants to help. We've got really some phenomenal people from all walks of life. And
Norman Fenton as well.
that's what I mean, the professor
Yeah,
of mathematics. Yeah.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
phenomenal. And now you had your first event. That wasn't without controversy before it even started. They tried to
No.
cancel it. And you or I were just discussing it behind the scenes. What happened?
So we booked the Crown Plaza Hotel in Newcastle about a month ago. When I realized we were going to hit our 30,000 hurdle, we we planned our formal launch. We booked the Crown Plaza Hotel, and we were at pains to let the Crown Plaza Hotel know that we are Advance UK. We are a political party. Please be under no illusion. Here's a website. Have a look. And they said, no problem. Blah blah blah. We'd like you to pay up front. So we paid it all up front. And then I think it was Tuesday last week, so just over 8 days ago, we got a call saying that they'd been threatened and they were going to cancel the event, return our money, but cancel the event. And we were obviously very concerned because we had only just a few days in which to organize a venue that could accommodate 463 people, as it turns out, turned up on the day. And I called the Crown Plaza guy, and I was going to get upset with him. How dare you cancel us? You promised you wouldn't. Um, we made you fully aware of who we were. But I on the other end of the phone was an individual whose voice was cracking up. And it was cracking up with that kind of stress you get when you're slightly panicked or you're anxious. And he'd clearly been subjected to some pretty serious threats. He wouldn't tell me precisely how they'd been delivered, but he'd been subjected to some threats. And my instant kind of upset melted to concern for him, and I understood it. And then we rang around 20 odd venues in Newcastle, many of which said that they would host us until they heard who we were, and then they said no. And but there was one brave restaurant in the end that did host
It was an
us, and
Indian restaurant, wasn't it?
no, it wasn't an Indian restaurant. It was. I don't believe it was an Indian restaurant.
Oh,
It was
somebody
a
told me it was one of your regular people, but maybe it wasn't. Well, you'll know what it
no.
was.
It was the food was what I would call sort of, what do they call that? It's not Chinese or Japanese, but Pan Asian kind
Pan
of
Asian, okay.
Pan
Yes.
Asian menu. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, you managed to get them all in this Asian restaurant. Maybe that's what they meant to work on that sort of
Yeah.
basis. But a great success. You had lots of people there, lots of very passionate speakers. You had a few technical issues. I tried to sort of get in on the first stream. What happened there?
So the streaming arrangement that we had, unknown to us, only worked on one output, and that output was taken by Jim Ferguson. So you could have watched it seamlessly on Jim Ferguson's X profile, but the minute he put it on his thing, the others that we had lined up to put it out on their channels weren't able to do it, and you
Ah,
presumably weren't able to do it either. But we had a fantastic event, and the adversity to which we'd been subjected before the event, I think made it even better
yeah.
because we got there come hell or high water, and the spirit I mean, the atmosphere in the room was fantastic. The spirit was phenomenal.
Yeah, and certainly people can catch up online. I'd urge them to have a look at that, see for themselves. The other conferences going on at the moment, obviously, Keir Starmer, he's promising, he's got all sorts of fighting talk now, hasn't he? Fight with every breath I have for the tolerant, decent, respectful Britain I know. He's also rubbishing Farage and what he calls racist policies. He says that pains to emphasise he's not talking about Farage himself, but rather the policies. What do you take about the sort of Sir Keir Starmer's rhetoric?
I think he's made a fundamental mistake. Um, you can't accuse someone of having racist policies without simultaneously accusing those who made the policies and those who support the policies of being racist. And, one thing you learn pretty quickly in British politics, and it's another reason why I don't know why politicians didn't address the Unite the Kingdom rally. One thing you learn pretty quickly in politics is you don't insult the electorate. They're your client. You want their vote. So I think he's done a really stupid thing. And there are lots of Labour voters who want borders for this country, who want mass migration to be reversed, who want illegal migration to be stopped, who want the hotels to be emptied. And they must be looking at him and thinking, what the hell? You're a complete plonker. Or what did they say at the march? Remind me.
Well, I think you were leading the singing at one point, Ben.
I didn't lead it. I followed. I wasn't leading it.
I love it. Well, you also got unfortunate rhetoric as well, which we have to tone down. Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy, he previously, although he's now distanced himself from it, he said that Nigel Farage flirted with Hitler Youth.
That's outrageous. I mean, we know David Lammy is supremely intellectually challenged, but that he must know is a lie. And to associate Nigel Farage, I've got my differences with Nigel Farage, but I would never say something as outrageous as that.
Yeah,
I
don't think that's right.
They should stick to the truth, shouldn't they, Andrew? They should stick to the
absolutely.
truth.
There's only one, well, variations of the truth. So who would you vote for as Prime Minister, Farage or Sir Keir Starmer?
Ben
Who's your
Habib.
preferred one?
Ben Habib.
There you go. Well, manifesto, let me push you on a few of these issues. I know you're probably still busy formulating policy, but we can get your sort of headlines on these. Labour's manifesto, They talked about this triple tax lock. Everybody remembers in the manifesto, we're not going to raise national insurance, VAT, or sort of income tax. On hard-working, but ordinary folk, whatever it is, whatever they are. But here they come in with these tax rises. What's your take on that?
Well, it's an extraordinary thing. Everyone says Liz Truss broke the economy with her attempt to cut taxes. She tried to cut taxes by about £45 billion. In Rachel Reeves' first budget, having said that they'd inherited a so-called £20 billion black hole, he had unfunded spending commitments of about 35 billion, which is the same as unfunded tax cuts of 45 billion, more or less. No one challenged her on it. And we are living under a dogma which basically says taxing, borrowing, and spending, and the ever-increasing reach of the state is fine. Reducing taxation, reducing spending, and liberating the British people from the burden of an overbearing state is not fine. Anyone who tries to do that, anyone who's pro-aspiration, pro-enterprise, pro the private sector, pro-giving people the opportunity to make their own way in life is set aside. But those who want to borrow, tax, spend, can do it to their heart's delight. And this government hasn't learnt a thing from the lessons it should have learnt when it increased employers' national insurance in that first budget as well. Employment tanked after that, and it's still tanking. And we've got now nearly 8 million people, or maybe over 8 million people as I speak, on universal credit. And instead of reversing direction, cutting costs and reducing the tax burden, he talks about fiscal probity in the context of putting taxes up yet again. But she's not being fiscally conservative. What she is doing is delighting herself with all the spending they're doing and then burdening us further with taxes. They don't know how to manage the economy. And at some point, the goose is going to stop laying golden eggs. I don't think we've had a golden egg for a long time, but it may stop laying eggs altogether. And at that point, we're going to have a run on the pound, massive inflation, and even the IMF won't be able to bail us out. I don't know what they think they're doing, Andrew. They claim to be the adults in the room. They're behaving like blooming kindergarten economists.
Yeah. And I think it's always, I say, Truss comes in on foot and leaves on horseback. And when you make these manifesto promises and so flagrantly breach them so early, it is extraordinary. And I think your point about the general electorate are much cleverer than people give credit for. They realise that if you're going to spend some money, you've got to get it from somewhere. But you just have to be honest about it, don't you?
You've got to be honest and stop spending. the state is the biggest borrowing since World War II as a proportion of GDP. We've got the highest tax take as a proportion of GDP. And this approach to economic management has not worked.
Yeah.
So why do they think that if they do more of it, it's going to work? It would be sensible to try something different, like cutting costs and cutting taxes. But they won't do it because they're ideologically driven. They're not practically driven. They don't have the interests of the British people. One of the other things that Starmer accused Farage of is being anti-British. Farage I don't know where Farage is. I'm not going to comment on him. But certainly Starmer is
That makes a change,
entirely,
Ben.
well, you keep asking me about Farage. People keep asking me. But Starmer is fundamentally anti-British. Absolutely. He couldn't even discern which constituency in this country it is to whom he is obliged. He talks about the diverse Britons. He talks about it being racist to remove benefits from foreigners. Foreigners are not a protected characteristic. They're not an ethnic group. Foreigners are just people who aren't British citizens. He can't define the difference. And if you can't define your constituency, that is the British people, how the hell are you going to be governing for their benefit? You can't. He's anti-British. He can't even identify who the hell he's meant to be looking after.
Yeah, no, interesting point. Digital ID, that's been hitting the headlines a lot. Rupert's done this petition saying it's the foundations of a surveillance state. Where are you on it?
Completely against digital ID. You don't punish those. You don't seek to control those who are already law-abiding with more restrictions because you've got a rogue element in your society which you have been unable to control. The idea that by restricting our own ability to do what we would otherwise freely do is going to somehow prevent illegal migrants coming into the country or being housed in four-star hotels, given free meals, given money in their back pockets. How is that related? The breakdown of our borders is not going to be suddenly reversed because you and I are carrying digital IDs or subject to digital IDs. That's just ridiculous. And and you already need to have a national insurance number to work legally in this country. So if it's to try and prevent illegal migrants getting jobs with Deliveroo, etc., it's not going to work because they're already breaking the law to perform those jobs. And what it is, Andrew, is yet again the state taking more control, more influence. It's akin to more state spending. It's just another way of the state expanding its role.
Yeah.
So I say
Although
no, no,
they do
no.
say it'd save a significant amount and help combat the over 3 billion of fraud. But all of those factors is an ongoing debate. But I think your position is fairly clear. The other thing they're talking about, which I've been talking about forever, is embracing technology, not least to reduce the waiting time on NHS lists. The NHS online, 8.5 million virtual consultations by 2027. Is that a good idea?
Look, I've heard this. Matt Hancock used to bang on about this in 2017-18. It's never happened. I'll believe it when I see it. It all sounds great. Oh, yes, we can do it all online. And we'll just be in some kind of nirvana, utopia, all of a sudden. It's not going to happen, is it?
Okay, well, I think it will happen if you embrace technology in the right sort of way.
Yeah.
Chatting to Chat GPT is more effective than chatting to
Well, why
your
haven't they done it so
GP.
far, Andrew? Why haven't they done it already? They should
Well,
have
they
done
should
it.
do. They embrace it. I think the
Yeah.
opportunities are there. As you can increase efficiencies. I want to put the AI into Britain. There, I'll give you a slogan.
Well, some I in our government would be helpful.
Oh, there you go. Sadiq Khan. That was the other one. Sadiq Khan. So Keir
Another
Starmer,
I, but a
he's
different kind of I.
well, there you yeah, he's got an AI in the middle there somewhere. Well, so Keir
Yeah.
Starmer, he criticised Donald Trump's attack on him, said it was ridiculous. Basically, Sadiq Khan was excluded from the pomp and ceremony of down in Windsor. I was down there with Trump and a few others. He said that racist, sexist, and misogynistic was Mr. Trump. That's what they said. He was basically saying Sadiq Khan, this is according to Sir Keir Starmer, is doing a very good job. Do you support that view of Sadiq?
I think Sadiq is a first class I. I think he holds London virtually in contempt. He is wed to these extreme forms of ideology that supersede all other commonsensical approach to governance. No, I think he's a terrible, terrible human being. We also know he's a liar. he tried to get Imperial College to manufacture its results to justify his ULEZ zone. He keeps banging on about that one individual who died from asthma because of, carbon emissions. They lived, I think, directly above the A40 or A4, I can't remember, and they were extremely asthmatic. No, he's an awful man, and under him you can't get around London easily. Crime rates are through the roof. Council taxes are through the roof. The Met doesn't understand it should be policing crime. It's policing tweets. The whole thing's just going pear-shaped.
Another person you're obviously a fan of is Ed Miliband, who today has said, we have a message for Elon Musk. Get the hell out of our politics and our country. What do you think of Ed's views?
Well, the same pretty much as I had for Sadiq Khan and Starmer before that. I mean, this guy would have us all in penury again for this extreme ideology of net zero. This country is not going to flourish if our energy costs are 3 times what it is in Europe. And the Europeans are pretty mad anyway with what they're doing with net zero. We've got to use the gas that's available to us from the North Sea. We've got to use the oil that's available to us from the North Sea. We've got to stop forcing the cost of living up by getting people to get rid of their perfectly good cars and perfectly good gas boilers and replace them with ridiculously expensive electric cars and heat exchangers. We've got to stop penalizing manufacturers for selling gas boilers and internal combustion engine cars. We've got to stop forcing people to insulate their buildings to such a degree that mold now is the biggest problem in new build properties. We've got to get rid of this net zero building approach, which prohibits, by the way, thousands and thousands of town centres from being repurposed because the buildings can't comply with net zero targets. We've got loads of space that could be turned into housing, but they're going to build on greenfield sites. These mouldy houses are going to be built on greenfield sites, because the regulations around net zero make it impossible to renew our town centres. There's so many town centres in this country that are now derelict because they can't be repurposed because of that legislation. And that gives rise to crime. All these things are related. And he's part of the same lot. He's a lunatic.
You've got a big fan base, a big Christmas card list, I can tell there. It's going to be good.
I don't know. I'll send myself a Christmas card.
Rupert, no, because everybody, when they respond to these programs, they say, look, when and Ben and Rupert going to get together? Elon's reposting in the same way as he does with yours. He reposts Rupert's posts as well. Rupert said, get called a racist, xenophobe, Islamophobe, far right. Who cares? Honestly, it doesn't matter. He got 8 million views from that as a result of Elon's repost. Where are you with Rupert at the moment?
I don't have much contact with Rupert. He's doing his own thing and I'm doing my own thing. He doesn't think a political party is needed. I can't see how a movement is going to achieve anything. I've joined Restore Britain and he does some interesting tweets and he puts out some interesting petitions and so on. But how is a movement, a cross-party movement, which is the collective of all the failed politicians that have delivered us into this difficulty, how is motivating them into a movement going to solve the nation's problems? What we need is a fresh approach, fresh blood, new people, clear-thinking people to take control of government and then deliver for the British people. Recycling the same old people again and again and again in a movement or in reform or whatever is not going to solve the nation's problems.
Okay, very interesting. Finally, and I did say finally, you've doubled your fee for membership.
Yeah, well, it was low and it was very low and now it's still low. But we've gone from £10 to £20 now that we always said we would. Once we hit the 30,000 target, we'd increase it to £20.
Okay, and what can we expect to see over the next few weeks before I get you back?
So nothing we do is going to be dramatic in the next few weeks. We have a steady flow of former grassroots members of Reform coming over to us because they see Reform for what it is, and that's building our base. We are getting on with the serious business of policy making now. Literally, I launched that this morning. And we are also obviously dealing with the Electoral Commission, and that I think will be the next step, getting our registration through.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we followed you all the way on this journey on the Andrew Eborn Show. We launched at your very beginning, when we launched when you hit
You did
your
30th of June, yeah.
30,000. We've been with you on the Tommy Robinson marches and other bits and pieces. We look forward to those next stages as well. But for now, Ben Habib, thank you for
Thank you,
joining me.
Andrew. Thank you.